It's the fourth Sunday of autumn. Our Unitarian Universalist bylaws affirm 6 values centered in love and inseparable from each other. On the fourth Sunday of the season, we call to mind the fourth such value, transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. Our opening hymn is number 34 in your gray hymnal, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. Please rise as you are able. Good morning. I'm Louise Alcorn, she, her, and I'm your celebrant this morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. Our building is located on land that has been home to humans for 12,000 years, starting with the people of woodland culture and later the Iowa, Sauk, and Meskwaki. Other animals, such as the Marasinon, it's a hard one. Marasononyx, I think. It's known as the American cheetah. Okay. Extinct since about 16,000 years ago, once roamed these lands. I love the idea of a cheetah running through Iowa. As we enter this space, the ghosts of humans and other animals past are among us. We are called to join in the work of education, reparation, and healing for all species. Today is the fourth Sunday of autumn, and it finally feels like it. The moon is waxing gibbous, and the hunter's moon will be full on Wednesday night. Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement and the holiest day of the year in Judaism, began on Friday evening and ended yesterday evening. A special welcome to our visitors. For those of you on Zoom, thank you for tuning in, and please be sure your mic is muted. If you are here with children, there is childcare, or feel free to keep them seated with you or utilize our play area in the back. We are a people of covenant, not of creed, and we express our covenant in our denomination's bylaws, our bond of union, our mission, and our relational covenant. Today, please join me in reading our congregation's mission in your order of service. We covenant together to advance our mission, to love radically, grow ethically and spiritually, and serve justly. This year's curriculum for spiritual growth and learning is sketched in our thematic ministry flyer, which is available on the back table. Our theme for October is fear. Packets are available in the baskets just outside the door. The forum after the service today is a search party. The search parties are part of our ministerial search process, whereby we come together in small groups to collectively imagine the next era of this congregation. Your input is vital to the search committee members who will be interviewing candidates for senior minister in just a few short months. If you're not able to stay for today's search party/forum, in your order of service today is, I believe, a slip of paper to sign up for one of the search parties being held later this week. And there's at least one search party that's via Zoom if you simply cannot make it here to the building. You can drop the slips of paper off in the box at the back of the auditorium on your way out. And now we light our chalice. On the fourth Sunday of the season, we dedicate our chalice to the value of transformation. Please join with me in the chalice lighting words from Napoleon Lovely in your order of service. We light this chalice to affirm that new light is ever waiting to break through, to illumine our way. That new truth is ever waiting to break through, to enlighten our minds. And that new love is ever waiting to break through, to warm our hearts. The responsive reading is number 531 in the back of your hymnal, and I gotta go grab my hymnal. You think we have this all stage managed, but really no. All right, please respond with the indented and italicized words. Let us learn the revelation of all nature and thought, that the highest dwells within us, that the sources of nature are in our own minds. I am constrained every moment to acknowledge a higher origin for events than the will I call mine. Every moment when the individual feels invaded by it is memorable. The soul's health consists in the fullness of its reception. Within us is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. Our sung invocation words are in your order of service. That's literally my favorite tune in the entire hymnal, just to be clear. All right, our story today is 10 Timid Ghosts by Jennifer O'Connell. Sorry, I'm a librarian, I gotta do this. Okay. 10 timid ghosts in a haunted house. A witch moved in and wanted them out. One saw a skeleton and let out a whine. He flew to the woods, and then there were 9. 9 timid ghosts in a haunted house. A witch moved in and wanted them out. One saw a bat and didn't wait. She flew to the woods, and then there were 8. 8 timid ghosts in a haunted house. A witch moved in and wanted them out. One saw a ghoul and screamed, "Oh my heaven!" He flew to the woods, and then there were 7. 7 timid ghosts in a haunted house. A witch moved in and wanted them out. One saw a cat. What a terrible fix. She flew to the woods, and then there were 6. 6 timid ghosts in a haunted house. A witch moved in and wanted them out. One saw an owl and took a dive. He flew to the woods, and then there were 5. 5 timid ghosts in a haunted house. A witch moved in and wanted them out. One saw a vampire and dashed to the door. She flew to the woods, and then there were 4. 4 timid ghosts in a haunted house. A witch moved in and wanted them out. One saw a monster and was as scared as could be. He flew to the woods, and then there were 3. 3 timid ghosts in a haunted house. A witch moved in and wanted them out. One saw a spider, and what did she do? She flew to the woods, and then there were 2. 2 timid ghosts in a haunted house. A witch moved in and wanted them out. One saw a rat and started to run. He flew to the woods, and then there was 1. 1 clever ghost in a haunted house. A witch moved in and wanted her out. She saw the witch coming undone. Her costume's coming off. She flew to the woods, and then there were none. And then 10 angry ghosts in the deep, dark wood. That witch is too tricky and just no good. This isn't fair. We live in there. Let's band together and give her a scare. 1 mean old witch in a haunted house. 10 brave ghosts wanted her out. Boo! The witch saw the ghosts and howled with fear. She tore out the door, screaming, "Get me out of here!" The end. Please join me in singing the children to their classes.
Don Shepard from Green Sanctuary.
And I'm Linda Goff, pronouns she, her. Don and I are here to let you know about an important all-church event, which is the Climate Justice Revival taking place October 26th and 27th. I'm excited about the revival because our church has chosen to join in a larger UUA movement. And the curriculum's been developed by the UUA, but we'll be making it our own. There are over 350 congregations doing this climate revival this fall. I'm also excited that I'm a member here at First Unitarian because this church is so evidently involved in social justice, both as a group and individually among many members. And we know that climate justice intersects with so many other types of justice, and that's why this is an important revival. We'll focus on 3 things. First of all, what my community needs, what brings me joy, and what I have to offer. And we don't very often hear climate and joy in the same sentence. So it kind of fits with that fear. So often it fits with that fear theme for this year. or for this month. But this is a different approach. It's uplifting because it's focusing on what brings us joy. One thing that brings me joy is children and our future generations, and that's why it's so important for me to join with you to be doing this climate revival. And Don's going to share why he's excited.
Yeah, revival means to restore life or to rejuvenate. What we're going to do is try to imagine together traveling from an age of extraction to a new era, and with love at the center. So we're going to look ahead about 25 years to the year 2050, and that's far enough ahead that we can let our imagination run a little bit wild, but it's close enough that we'll still be a little familiar with the time. And then we'll try to connect our gifts, our joys, and the needs of the community, of the world, and see how we can fit into that best future we can imagine.
Here are the details. On Saturday, October 26th, the revival will take place from 10 to 3. A vegan lunch will be provided. Childcare will be provided for children under 5 or under kindergarten age. We just need to know if you're bringing a child that young so we can arrange for it. There'll be an adult track, which includes coming-of-agers and high schoolers in our imagining. And there'll be a youth track for kindergarten through 5th grade.
Yes, be sure to, we need to know how many people to provide food for snacks and meal. And we also may need to know how many supplies we'll need for some activities we have. So be sure to sign up on Sign Up Genius today or tomorrow, because that's the last day it's going to be available. Make sure you get an email that says you've signed up, otherwise maybe you didn't, and we'll have a wrong count. Also, if you really don't like Sign Up Genius or can't do it, we'll be available after church out in the lobby, so you can let us know you're coming, and we'll try and merge your information into the list. So on the 27th, we'll have end up with a synergy of the revival in our service. And so let's go and restore our life.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Anna Davis Evans. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am your pastoral care associate this morning. This morning, we open our arms and our hearts a little wider to hold all of the joys and sorrows present and not ready to be shared aloud yet. In this time of changing leaves and changing weather, we acknowledge the changes happening throughout our community. A parent adjusting to their grown child being away at school or living in a different city. A family adjusting to a new family member. Each person here adjusting to their lives without their family members being physically present. We remember those preparing to transition out of this life and into whatever comes next. We hold their loved ones close. We keep our hearts open to those figuring out a new job, a new living situation, or coming to terms with needing to make something new happen in their lives. We remember that World Mental Health Day was marked this past week, and we take a moment to acknowledge that every single one of us has struggles and triumphs that others don't always see. May we bring grace and love to this world with our minds and our hearts open wide.
A month into autumn, which is finally feeling like autumn, we begin to feel the transition in the world. The air cools, the leaves fall, the light lessens. A somber Yom Kippur passed yesterday after a year of escalating conflicts throughout the Middle East. Long-held disputes and manifesting fear are making civilian lives impossible throughout the region. Kenyan soldiers traveled 7,000 miles to assist the people of Haiti, whose daily lives have been overrun by gangs. No one is sure if it's helping, but they are trying. Closer to home, Hurricanes Helene and Milton have caused still to be determined levels of devastation to lives and livelihoods, compounded by cruel misinformation at the worst possible time. However, as always, kind people drove hundreds of miles simply to offer supplies, help, and love. We look to the light as child mortality rate in the world is likely at its lowest ever. Female political participation is rising, having more than doubled since 2000, and our neighbors spend beautiful fall days knocking on doors, asking us simply to vote. Finding inspiration in science, the first commercial ventures to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere are becoming operational. And a biochemist and 2 computer scientists were awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for cracking the code for proteins' structures. They created tools which researchers around the world have been using to develop targeted therapies to determine how plastic decomposes, and more. They hope that vaccine development, in particular, could be shortened from years to months. As the light grows dimmer, there is still much that is bright and hopeful.
Let us share together now the names of anyone we know who could use some special care and attention. You may call the names out loud or type it into the chat. As we share these names, may the love of this community hold them all. May the light of our community shine on the broken places of the world. May the work of our hands and hearts support, aid, and comfort all those who are hungry or thirst for food or water justice, or freedom. May we never look away when we are needed. May those who are grieving be comforted. May those who are tired find rest. May the broken places be healed. May those who are filled with joy and laughter be abundant. We light 3 candles, one for the joys and sorrows shared aloud, one for those shared in writing, and one for those held silently among us. We now observe a minute of silence.
Our first reading is from the Christian Bible, the book of Matthew, chapter 6, verses 25 through 34. Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? And which of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your span of life? And why do you worry about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, what is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? Therefore do not worry, saying, what will we eat, or what will we drink, or what will we wear? For it is the Gentiles who seek all these things, and indeed your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. So do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring worries of its own. Today's trouble is enough for today. Our second reading is an excerpt from the Reverend Dr. Gary Pence's website, Healing Religion's Harm, from a piece called My Development, which is one person's reflection on how his particular Christian tradition caused psychological harm. He says, "The counseling studies, my own 3 years of therapy, and the therapy I've offered to others continue to alter my theology. I have come to believe that if the world must construct a God for itself, it needs to be a compassionate God who does not carp, criticize, or condemn, who does not threaten punishment or visit eternal misery on anyone, who is ultimately empathetic, i.e., understanding, unconditionally loving and accepting, unreservedly supportive of life abundant for the whole creation. Like Matthew Fox, I would place an emphasis on God's original blessing rather than on humanity's original sin, a doctrine designed by Augustine. To avoid harm, I believe the Bible, as well as all the dogmas, doctrines, and documents of the Church, must be viewed critically in their historical context as products of natural human creativity. And I have come to appreciate the contributions that the Jesus Seminar has made to the honest, critical assessment of biblical texts. God's living word is not located in the texts themselves, but in the interaction between the reader, in the company of other contemporary readers, and the texts, in the light of the cultural changes that have occurred and the new realms of knowledge that have opened up between the writing and the reading. As my mentor, Krister Stendahl, would say, we need to emphasize and accentuate the distance between the world of the biblical authors and the authors of our dogmas and official doctrines and our own, rather than to collapse that distance as though those writers could just as well be living down the street from us. In my own life, in my counseling practice, and in my interactions with seminary students, I have come to know the damaging effects that religious beliefs and practices have inflicted on the most devout of children and adults. I find I have not been exempt from those effects myself. Even at this stage in my life, my theology and my religious consciousness remain in transition on the way to a future I trust, though I cannot know its dimensions." Sorry. I got all caught up in the reading, I'm sorry. I'm surprised Bruce wasn't like, Louise, go over there. We come now to the offering, almost forgot that, recalling our value transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. In the spirit of gratitude of which the offering is an expression, I mention now 3 of the more than 30 items currently on our Singing Gratitude bulletin board. Go take a look, it's fantastic. Thank you to Eileen Jackson for all the number crunching and reporting you did while we were in transition between bookkeepers, and for answering so many of our Tracy's questions when she was new and just coming on board. Thank you, Sally Buckholt, the bookkeeper we ended up settling on, for her help in so many areas and for advice and guidance. Thank you, Tom Thurtell, Back, and Walter Pearson for working tirelessly to get the weeds pulled and the door installed to our new storage area in the entryway. Yay. In gratitude, then, we give, for in gratitude, we receive.
Good morning. My name is Paul Nelson, and I'm a member of this congregation with all of you. And my pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a former ELCA Lutheran minister who served several Lutheran congregations throughout eastern and central Iowa. I can also say that I taught in 2 community colleges and taught world religions and the philosophy of ethics there in Muscatine and Boone. And I was profoundly educated at both of those locations, both in congregations and in the community college, about fear, about specifically how fear and religious harm can frequently raise their ugly heads in ways that I might never have anticipated. As you've heard, our theme this month is fear. That's why I thought it appropriate to address the issue of religion's harm. As someone who seeks to follow Jesus of Nazareth as my spiritual path, I find it particularly important for me to address this issue, which has in our Western history, let's be honest, bedeviled Christians and Christianity. By the way, as a brief aside, I hope you noticed that I said Jesus of Nazareth and not Jesus Christ. And that's because my spirituality dictates that I need to set that aside, including the Nicene Creed and the Apostles' Creeds, which many of you probably learned as a child. And thanks to the efforts of many modern Roman Catholic and Protestant biblical and theological scholars, as was mentioned before, the Jesus Seminar, my spiritual approach would also set aside a lot of the doctrinal and dogmatic affirmations that people fight about or have in the past, such as the virgin birth of Jesus, the benefits of his blood sacrifice from the cross, and the supposedly miraculous setting aside of natural law in Jesus' many healings as narrated in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And so I don't think I really need to lay out what awful stuff Christians have done throughout at least Western history. But let me name just a few. The early and significant anti-Jewish teaching that got baked into Christianity early on. I can't tell you how many Good Friday prayers that I've led at Lutheran congregations in which I've had to improvise on the spot because of their awful anti-Jewish implications of some of the prayers. And this reality from a Lutheran book of worship that was produced and used in Lutheran congregations at least since the late 70s and on through the 1990s. Next, while the early Jesus movement in Palestine was praiseworthy for its inclusion of women in its leadership, and I don't think that story is told often enough, hopefully you can call to mind, if you remember, all of those Greek names that you come across when you read some of Paul's epistles or Paul's writings that he mentions in them. Most of those names are Greek women. We don't really know because we don't know as Western Americans so much about Greek names, but many of those names are women. And he's quoting them as leaders in some of the early communities. Sadly, it has to be said that those early and noble efforts of Jesus' movement to include women and other marginalized people in the movement were cast aside by the Roman emperor's imperial designs, specifically thanks to Emperor Constantine at a bishop's convocation in Nicaea, from which we have the Nicene Creed. The church at that point strictly decided to codify what theologies were acceptable in churches and what was orthodox, of course. And those people and movements who sought to preserve alternate views about Jesus were cast aside. And they were often increasingly marked with the tag of heresy, which often meant not just exclusion, but death. The comedy troupe Monty Python's Flying Circus, if you remember that, those of you who are old enough, immortalized this historical period with their phrase, "Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, but it was real." If only that period was actually funny. From the 4th century on, the institution of the church became more and more centralized with the reality of authoritarian priests and bishops who wielded real power over everyday believers. Christian societies in Europe and elsewhere were organized like the old Roman society increasingly. God and church at the top, then women and children, then slaves and animals, and on downward. The doctrinal teachings, too, were top-down and authoritarian. They were enforced. God was distant and unapproachable, out there somewhere. This part is where fear and religious harm really came into play, in my view. Unlike our UU method for constructing and doing theology, the traditional method was to kind of spoon-feed the beliefs into the lowly lay people. It was assumed that they weren't smart enough to make sense and put something together for themselves that made sense to them. And so is it any wonder that as the church became more authoritarian in its practices, it caused fear? And ultimately, people were harmed. How you construct theology can unfortunately, I think, determine how much pain and fear you impose on unsuspecting people who simply want to find believable answers for all of their questions about life. Now, the excerpt of Pastor Gary Pence's church experience that Louise mentioned or read from before, of how he came of age in the authoritarian Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, is a more contemporary example of the kind of real fear that churches have elicited and the harm that subsequently resulted in his own life. The fear and harm were directly related to the hierarchical way that the Missouri Synod Lutherans both construct their theology and the realities of how it plays out in the real lives of real people in awful and sometimes heart-wrenching ways. After our interlude, I want to try to sketch out in a broad way my proposed spiritual path as kind of a model, because like a lot of people, maybe like many of you, I really don't want to throw Jesus out with the bathwater, so to speak, and seeking to follow Jesus as my spiritual path really shouldn't have to include a whole bunch of fear and religious harm at the end of the day. First of all, I'd like to say that I assume that the growing abandonment of the institutions of the church in our times is at least partly a result of this fear and harm that I spoke about a few minutes ago. In the 90s, when I was a pastor, most of the preoccupation that we all had who were clergy was, why is the church dying and losing members hand over fist, and why is there no, or what should be the way that we revitalize the churches? And I assume that the way theology is articulated is abstract and distant for the most part from an average person's experience. Is it crazy to think that he or she might well think this stuff has little to do with me or my experience in life? The other important thing to say is that theology is easier to weaponize and abuse people if in fact it is abstract and distant from the everyday experience of people like you and me. If the weaponizer sits atop a big hierarchy that is distant from his or her audience, I'm thinking of the Pope as a good example, well, that person can't really see the results of their weaponizer religiosity, can they? Let me cite an example from my own family of how this works out sometimes. My Irish Catholic mother once told me when I was visiting home from college one weekend, with much more force than I was expecting from Mom, that she believed that a bunch of old, never married men should never have the right to tell her what to do with her body, how many babies to have, and when to have them. My mom is not a real radical person, but on this, she was pretty firm. And I count that discussion as my first profound education about women's experience and the important reality that a person's experience profoundly shapes and ought to shape their theological or spiritual beliefs. I was 20 years old at the time, and as an aside, I would also assert that this historical process that I've talked about that has caused harm and instilled fear in the psyche of many people has been fertile ground for the growth and popularity of post-Enlightenment atheism in the last few hundred years. But back to Jesus. For modern scholarship and its results, I think we can come to a consensus regarding Jesus' spirituality. There's been a lot of good work on this topic. First, Jesus never really intended for people to bow down and worship him. There's no evidence in the Gospels that that's the case. His desire was to show a spiritual pathway that could lead people to a place of compassion, right relations, and hope. No one excluded. Second, as the late Bible scholar Marcus Borg asserted in his work, Jesus was a rabbi seeking to be attuned to and informed by how he perceived the Spirit of God. He was a spirit person, was his language. Another way to say that is to recognize Jesus as a mystic. By that, I mean that Jesus encountered that which is divine as being not irrational, not rational, maybe non-rational, a different kind of experience, by awe, by wonder, by an experience through which a person can rationally say how she or he encounters this force of the Spirit or this phenomena. Only that this person encounters it in a way that transcends how this world often thinks about these experiences. And then third, all people, Jesus of Nazareth asserted, have equal access to this compassionate, life-changing force, which we can name, as I've said, and Marcus Borg said, Spirit. A force in our natural world which can't ever be seen with our senses, nevertheless one that can be understood to be powerfully and wonderfully able to change people and societies for the better. A person can, I believe Jesus asserted, turn from alienation or disharmony to wholeness and fulfillment. Christianity, in this new form of spirituality, can learn to play nice with other systems of religion and philosophical belief, which we Christians have not always played nice. The peace and harmony in the coming years absolutely requires, I believe, this plurality of truth, which is actually what we Unitarian Universalists have always been saying, right? And in our world today, we see the results all around us of the weaponization of religion and spirituality. In closing, I want to assert that Unitarian Universalism could, realistically, be a vessel for the kind of spiritual revitalization that I'm hoping can come about in our world. Amen.
Please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, number 114, Through the Ages, Forward Through the Ages.
Please say with me our unison chalice extinguishing words. As we have gathered, so we depart, to carry into the world who we are, people of free faith seeking a deeper truth, people of love resolved to build belonging.
Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple, all space, its shrine, the good heart, its creed, all truth, its ritual, works of love, its profession of faith, divine living. Go in peace.